From humble beginnings as an experimental art school, temporarily housed in a former match factory, the State Art Academy Zurich, or SKZ, was founded in 1990 with an incoming class of only 12 students. Over the next 7 years, it grew to become the largest and best regarded art school in Canton Zurich, and a central force in Zurich's cultural scene during a time of rapid change and innovation. The SKZ was guided by a unique pedagogical system called natural learning, which emphasized group work, cooperative inquiry, and mutuality through a guided system of formal lessons. Classroom exercises progressed from simple studies in geometry to increasingly complex challenges. The program sought to develop students' sense of originality in concert with a working method that highlighted communication amongst peers. Students were encouraged to work out the solutions to creative problems amongst themselves before looking to the professors. It was hoped that with a solid foundation in formal concerns and independent creative problem solving, imitation could be avoided and a new culture could be created amongst the students. This was the philosophy set out by the 7 founding professors. Brought together over the summer of 1990, Werner Grob, Wesley Knabenhans, Pirmin Esslinger, Reto Reutlinger, Orl von Meis, Vitus Halbherr, and Beat Schollenberger were united by a determination to overcome the burdens of history and forge a new culture for Switzerland. A revolutionary pedagogy was needed, which would teach students to ground their work in a relationship to the natural world, in basic forms, and most importantly, in an ability to form productive relationships amongst themselves. It was hoped that the dialogue fostered between artistic practices at the student level would continue after graduation and would contribute to the growth and expansion of Swiss culture. The founders of the SKZ sought a pedagogy that would foster artistic growth, not simply as an individual pursuit, but as an act of creative exchange between the students. Their aim was nothing less than the creation of a new and dynamic culture for Switzerland. The professors recognized early on that in order for creative exchange to occur between individual students, rational guidelines had to be set. In setting these guidelines, the school turned to the newly formed Swiss Standards Organization. After a series of industrial mishaps was attributed to a lack of approved standards, the Swiss Standards Organization, or SVS, was formed by an act of parliament in 1989. Its mission was to bring together the scientists, engineers, and heads of manufacturing who would set out new guidelines to govern all industrial output. For the purposes of the new art school, the most important standard was SVS 216. This governed paper and canvas size. In order to ensure that canvas size was based on rational principles which could be applied across a variety of practices, a rectangular shape had to be determined, which met a number of important criteria. Its surface area should be easily calculable, so that the principles of harmonious composition could be easily demonstrated. After much debate, the professors, in concert with mathematicians from the SBS and engineers from the paper, lumber, and steel industries, settled on a series of so-called silver rectangles. The partnership proved beneficial, not just for the new art school, but also for the SVS, which collected data from the students and professors regarding the efficacy and clarity of the new standards. Another striking example of a partnership between the SKS and Swiss industry was accomplished when Professor Wesley Knabenhans used his connections to convince the head of Integrated Art Services, or IKS, Switzerland's premier art and office supply manufacturer, to produce an initial run of 480 student-grade stretcher bars, sufficient to build canvases in each of the 5 new standard sizes. In time, the relationship with IKS would become one of several important partnerships that the school forged with Swiss industry. With these provisions in place, professors felt confident that they had laid firm groundwork for a pedagogy in which creative experimentation of individual students could take place within a rationally structured system of creative communication. By the spring of 1990, it was clear that the school had outgrown its home in the old match factory. The professors petitioned the state for a new building, and architects Pierman Knepfer and Silva Verdmuller won the commission. In June, construction began on a building whose size and vision would match the ambitions of the school. The new building was designed to promote the foundational goal of the SKZ, to promote individual creative pursuits as part of a larger, rational system of cultural production. The new building would have at its center spacious open areas for social activities. These included a lounge area with large foam shapes that could be reconfigured according to student whims. The lounge was used as a space for art happenings, lectures, performances, student protests, or simply for relaxing. There was also a library, a theater, a music room, a coffee house, a canteen, and a daycare center. Each was conceived in partnership with one of the sponsors, who were playing an increasingly important role in the formation of the new program. Betterkinden Tobacco, the manufacturer of Letzte brand cigarettes, favored by students for their bold advertisements, sponsored the theater and music room. Letzte would redesign its packaging based on the school's version of the iconic Swiss standard painting, instantly recognizable to anyone familiar with Swiss art at that time. In its original incarnation at the Match Factory, the students of the SKZ had all been enrolled in the first level program. They were known as apprentices. Now, at the Knepfer-Verdmuller building, there were students at each level of advancement. The professors had to scramble to develop curricula for the second, third, and fourth level students. Little is known about the most advanced fourth level curriculum. A few surviving documents indicate that students were involved in an intensive and secretive process. They seem to have been delving deeper into the basic materials of painting, while simultaneously moving upward into higher planes of abstraction. The artifacts from this period demonstrate an astonishing communality of vision, as students worked perhaps in parallel or perhaps in concert. Of the 9 classes that participated in the fourth level program, only the work of one class has been located. This final project, created by Vitas Halper's 1997 class, held that year in room 17, shows the work of 18 students acting in uncanny concert. Each has created a unique black monochrome in the 2A0 format that was reserved for students in their final semester. It seems likely that the pigments and paints were created by the students themselves and not by IKS, as the monochromes suffer from a tragically high degree of material degradation. There is a brief essay published in the May 1997 issue of Art Student Life, which describes in impressionistic language the transformational process the students experienced in Halper's class. It was written by Hani Ebensberger, whose name also appears on the back of one of the monochromes. After much hard work and much searching, we arrived at our conclusions. We asked many difficult questions of ourselves. the professors asked nothing else. We found that the more we worked alone, the more we were working together. We came from different places, and through a process which we cannot retrace, arrived at the same place. Although the paintings we made may appear identical, to us they are as diverse as we are as individuals. Although the SKZ continued for another 2 years, it appears to have entered into a state of decline. The incoming classes became much smaller, and few paintings survive from the years 1998 and 1999. Art student life ceased publication in the spring of 1998. In December of 1999, the SKZ was dissolved by an act of Parliament. Thank you.
Hello, can you guys hear me? Yeah. Okay. If you can't, somebody just tell me at any point. Like, literally. Okay. I just need to make a costume change. performer. Okay. Oh shoot, sorry. So, I know we just met each other, some of us, so I hope this is not too soon, but I was hoping that you would just hum along with my song. Don't have to try too hard, you can just do like a soft hum, but not at all. So I'm talking, or not talking, doing tonight about talking, doing, being about my work. You might want to stand up, by the way, or like move, just like be where you want to be, because it's not important to me that you're sitting. And I want to tell you guys about a dream that I had the other night about my grandfather, who's alive. I had this dream that he died, and my dad, like, put my grandpa on this half wall between our family room and our kitchen for some reason, and it's a dream, so it made sense. And I said to my dad, he can't stay there because that thing that happens, I don't know, sometimes a body moves after a person has died. And I said that he couldn't stay there, he's going to fall off. And he did, and then my grandpa, and then he got back up, and then he fell off again. And then he started doing this thing, like this dance, like he was in like a Disney version of like Voodoo New Orleans, like maybe he was in Princess and the Frog, I don't know. It was like he was kind of, not possessed, but there was this being in him that just like could not rest. And it was not my grandfather, but it was not sinister either. It couldn't rest. And so I don't know, I knew from looking at him that this like being wanted me to like exercise it. And so I started screaming, like this harmonic scream. It was like this scream that like got this being out of my grandfather and let him rest. And the feeling totally changed. It was like some kind of peaceful, it's like rainbows, I don't know. And I'm very interested in fear. I'm very interested in fear, just total fear. What is it? It's nothing. It's nothing, that's what it is. And it's like, you know, it's like scary faces, like, that are scary. I don't know if this is scary, it's drawing. It's sort of scary. If you saw this alone in your room, I think it'd be scary. I'd be scared. And I sort of been thinking about this like kind of face. And what's scary about it is because it's smiling, it's like, you know, if it was like sad, like it had a little sad face. If it was like sad, like this. Not scary. Or if it was like a little like cutie, like it was like like this. And it's also not scary. So it's like I think it's like some combination of it's smiling, like it knows something, it's somehow like joyful, it like wants to play, but it's also very ugly. And I suppose I think that's what fear is something ugly that wants to play with you. And so you gotta play with it. That's one way to kind of destroy it. And always trying to play with my fear, performing here all the time. And to just let some total fear go. Don't really know what fire is. All right, so can we turn the lights on? Also wanted to share this with you guys. This is like this sculpture thing. I made it. I didn't know what it was, but sometimes I put it on my head when I'm feeling a little too serious. And I just like walk around the house and talk to myself in the mirror because it's really hard to feel really serious about whatever's like stressing you out when you have this like stupid thing in your head. And it's also kind of like I don't know, I just let it like tell me where to go. Like that's what it feels dumb to say this. That's what art is. But I don't know. Sometimes I don't see that many people just like letting themselves go with it. And I just think we should just all go with it like that, you know? Also, I'm kind of sad because the real performance happened today when I had this on my head in my apartment and this woman drove by and I was not wearing any pants and she just looked up at me and then she looked up at me again, did a double take, and that's a real performance. And there's no way to replicate that. So I also would like to take this opportunity to say if there are any people whose business it is to make art history, just take note. I'm not doing a performance right now. I don't know what this is. This is something else. You can find a name for it later, but I just want to say that because I've been struggling with that word. And if anybody wants to wear it, feel free. So crazy. I can't tell you guys how many hours I spent doing this for myself. I think a performance really has to happen in private. I really do. I do think that. But I got a song for you. One more song. Took a run on Tuesday and felt reality totally slip. It opened up into a wide, wide, wide space, and I couldn't feel any of it. I was ready to die. My soul would leave my body, but it didn't happen. So I thought, what's next? And what can I really love when I'm never sure if it exists? But I know I can find it in you. If I make it so. we live for if we're all just floating and running alone is fine, but it has no meaning. Is it love, or is it just a game? Can I love you for watching me play? Can I play the game and love the same? Lord, let me play. Let me play. Let me play. Let me Let me forget it's a game. Oh, let me play. Thank you.
Application of that research, their process and the ideas behind their process. It's curiosity and labor and belonging. It's Jane Fonda and it's resin molds and it's surfing the internet. It's where you go and what you do when you get there. I can't decide if it's an uncritical or hyper-generous approach. An older and established guard of critics resent that word, practice, and all that it carries with it. Illusions of professionalism, of salaried labor, of white-collar membership and its accompanying legitimized accreditations and licensees. Who practices, after all, if not your dentist, your doctor, your analyst, your lawyer? I visit my gynecologist in a fancy private practice because I have good health insurance now through my job. Is there such a thing as public practice? Is that the difference between practice and service? Authority, which offers not only power but permission, cannot be socialized. For Peter Sheldall and Roberta Smith, the word practice calls it nameplates in an office complex. It turns artists into conventional authority figures. Those critics resent the word, considering it to be not only a lexical vestige developed inside MFA programs, but in fact as a reflection of those programs themselves, which now offer degrees in practice. Artists feel that they must receive a terminal certificate in order to produce seriously. Maybe you know what I mean. What happened to discipline? What happened to passion? They want to know. Practice implies then not only studied preparation and communal participation, but also institutionalized systems of capital exclusion. During the 4 years I ran cross-country and indoor and outdoor track and field at UCLA, I changed in and out of my running clothes in a small bathroom stall next to the temporary art building in Westwood. I fretted that my peers might discover my status as an athlete. that they would understand it at best as an oddity and at worst as a marker of inferior intellectual ability. David Foster Wallace wrote that we love our athletes precisely because they are insipid, unambiguous characters, that this is not the price of the gift, but its essence. I couldn't comprehend what a life of the body had to offer a life of the mind, which of course is also a life of the body. My existence revolved around a different, if related, kind of practice during this time. Practice was the thing that I did with and to my body about 850 hours a year. It was where I went and to whom I reported. It was how I reached exhaustion every day, touched the irregular edges of my body. It was the reason I didn't get my period for 4 years. It was the reason that my bones began to deteriorate. Pleasure itself is not sought through repetition. It is repetition, writes Deleuze. Maybe because the word practice was not yet as fashionable in the classroom in the early 2000s. Or maybe because I felt my two lives to be staunchly irreconcilable. It escaped my notice that both running and art were soundtracked by the same fundamental term. I loved this movie when I was a teenager, and I love it even more now. Personal Best is about two women training for a 1980 Olympic Games that they know has already been boycotted by the United States over the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan. It is a film about practice. Sport is only the conductor. Athletic life is not used as a blanket metaphor for competitiveness or for discipline, as it is in so many sports movies and bad pieces of writing. The movie, which is also a lesbian love story, refuses climax, even erotic climax, in its sexy and boring lovemaking scenes. Instead, making subject of ritual as grueling, desire-laden, restrained, ecstatic, anti-spectacle. It's a masochist game and it will always end in failure, their coach tells them and us at the film's outset. He's right, of course, which is what makes the practice so interesting. It's a perpetuation of infinite rehearsal. It's manifest and it's productive failure. In athletic terms and creative ones, the subject is by design met face-to-face with his or her own inadequacies, not as a byproduct of practice, but as its very point, to tease out faults and weaknesses in the attempt to patch, to strengthen, to move toward, but never quite reach one's own impossible potential. I'm interested here, as was Barney, the first artist I ever recognized to make subject of practice itself, in internal fissures as physiological failures, as well as external disappointments, like not making your college football team, say, or otherwise being let down or underperforming. Practice for the athlete is the perennial being of almost there, the great anticlimax, the anticipation, the unwitnessing. The artist, forever making, searching, rehashing, and confronting impossible and often laborious problems belongs to the same country. The first round of movie posters for Personal Best read, how do you compete with a body that you've already surrendered? And so, for me at least, it turns out that the most interesting part of practice is not really about salary, entrepreneurship, or professionalization. The most interesting part is not really about culture at all, be it corporate, cooperative, or institutional, as the critics would naturally have us believe. Rather, it is about the body's enactment of sustained and productive failure, executed as anti-deliverance through a torrent of invisible self-regulation. There is something fundamentally unshareable about that. Practice can certainly mean more than one thing. That's why we use it. What matters now is our reading of the word, which can help reflect and define what we do with it. Thanks. We just have one more performance tonight.
My name is Khalil. Thank you for coming. I want to thank Carmen for inviting me to do this. In lieu of a performance or a reading, I'm actually going to show a very rough cut, the first cut of a new video, which includes the text that I wrote. It's kind of a new poem that I just wrote, just finished. So this is, like I said, a very rough cut. I'm going to expand it. It's like 9 minutes long, and yeah.
Got a hold of me. mean, what was it? The main thing on it was the weight on the driver's license said 168 pounds. But looking current at the bottom, it said 225 pounds.
Which is that's big like that, 5 pounds heavier than Superman.
Yeah, that is. So, yeah, that's basically the main point. I mean, you know,
one of the greatest mysteries of all time. No one knows exactly.
Are you paying attention? Because Peter Sebastian pays attention.
The largest pyramid is made from over 2 million blocks. Take a moment and ask the burning question, how on earth was it built? And why?
So they were a funeral, but they cancelled it twice. So, you know.
This brings us nearly on to your 7-day theory.
Well,
the
7-day theory, there was actually an album he brought out, which is The Dawn.
Inkjet. Zardoz. Scratch off. Scratch off. The best of. Sam of Dave necessitates a clarity fulfilled only in the instance of exiting other feeling. The screen is a composite image of several screens, as these screens may entail a conversation. Yassine Bey explains why he left the US. I describe the theme from Ernest. I tell my driver, just fuck me up, fam, and take me anywhere besides LaGuardia. He asks me what I am doing in New York, and when I tell him, he begins to describe his own experiences with acid jazz. He'd been outside a Tower Records when it started raining one summer, when he was back living with his folks after he declared bankruptcy. He went into Tower Records having neither the will or $6 to buy an umbrella, and when he went up to the listening stations, the only one left was the brand new Heavies, a band he still somewhat admired, if only for making him forget that day how late he was going to be now that it was raining, and shouldn't he just spend the last of his money on an umbrella and get to the interview, even if he didn't care for Marjorie or her assistant, or even the man who'd recommended him or the job as it related to his acting career, or downtown now that he was living downtown. 10,000 officers pass. We go down a side road to avoid the commotion of the Vice President's motorcade when the GPS tells us to proceed to the route. We proceed to the route, but then backtrack several times, believing we've seen people we know from previous occasions. The theme of these, and other themes, sculptural disregard, that is, a state of sculpture that has at once attracted a parallel body in its space, but then the body doesn't know yet what to do, or even that it's been impressed with such a task. So much has been made of just how often his name came up during the conversation. Most of time undermines every device, and then lands you in a field behind the mobile. Convinced on every level you have not been here before, though your cohort insist you are mistaken. So stand the caravels in death, preserved in towering bonnets, the plans of which in themselves constitute many potential disasters requiring, in fact, the covering of their own. A similar shaped vitrine, with commentary by a squat and goggled attendant, also with problems of his own, demanding one's attention via a series of presentations, during which he thought of the response more appropriate to winning the conversation, which had much to do with remembering less obvious examples for his case, little to do with bringing up he could talk now that he didn't even live there anymore. At first, this talk was going to be about Aretha Franklin. Then it was going to be about Etta James. The depth and weight and odds and means of guiding you towards an understanding of both their voices are worth noting in any case. While the most commonplace understanding is one of a particularly charged connection with the soul, one's own, or that of the devoted, or spurned lover, or God, or a metropolis crumbling, it is the voice's instrument, semblance and practical advantage in a league of similarly unassuming advantages that can equal or overthrow our common gestures. The crux of her embrace of a certain social order is located upon the usual reasons for taking great pains, for requiring errant tones where silence used to be,
We talk, or start to talk, about Stevie Wonder channeling God for a certain number of years during the 70s, revering our own underlying skepticism of this proposition, or at least the part related to religion. We respect the ineffable in music, in our idea of others actively pursuing a faith, because we are convinced we relate, or could someday relate to the ineffable in our own small and palpable way. I was going to confine this lecture to the thirsty dust and the large feeling by who knows what matters, by what matters, by what matters to the dead, by the dim monitors and the transcript with additional vocals by we begin with her usual poems. We begin by cataloguing our respective approaches to syntax involving migrant and other forms of temporary labour. We give nicknames to each of the names of the help. We decide to hold off on coming up with a title until an hour before the post office closes. I start to talk about Beyonce and then Kanye West. In defense of Kanye West, I begin going through the motion of punching a man at a dinner party when he expands on his opinion of Bound 2, when I ask him to explain what he means when he says Kanye is a clown. I think of being allowed into the condition of absurdity and its antecedents, mediocrity and boredom with the prospect of the everyday. I wonder at the more appropriate reaction in the course of the conversation when indignation must be hidden, as most emotion must be hidden in the bulk of social exchange. I want to say that Kanye West is nothing if not consistent in publicly making a space in both himself and his surroundings for a third or even fifth place of suggestion, of the ridiculous, the sporadic and unconventionally rational. Who designed the pamphlet? Who prescribed the analogy? Who landed it hands-free? Who invented the concept of a restaurant so secret that it was dressed as an establishment of another variety, usually traditional fast food, but sometimes a dumpling place or an Indian place, and then, when you went in, you ordered everything off menu? Who enthralled the habitual? Who talked through the entire film? Who described the entire film as it was happening, as it related to his own conceptions of disguise?